Hi, you guys. Ana Cortez here with AnaCortez.com. It's 2020, can you believe it? And here I am in quarantine, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to reconnect with everyone. It's been a while, and I thought it would be a great opportunity to take a look back at the playing card oracle history of decks, because it's been a long time since this whole project first came into the world, and there have been a lot of twists and turns along the way, a lot of different decks, and I think it's been a point of confusion for some people, just keeping track of what's what goes with what book, what's available, what's not available, etc. And I love talking about the history of this project. It's just part and parcel of my own heart. So let's take a look at what we've got here. And to do that, we need to go all the way back to about 1978, believe it or not. That's when the very first illustrations started coming into being. It's when some of the preliminary drawings were happening, and my father was just taking paint and putting it on the canvas. So the very first set of images was complete around 1981-82, and it didn't have a name at that point. You know, it took my father completely by surprise. He wasn't expecting what came out on the canvas, so there was no agenda, right? There was no name, there was no plan as to what to do with these things. And so what happened was he took Polaroid photographs of all the cards, and he and his girlfriend at the time, Lainey, cut and pasted, these Polaroids out onto bicycle playing cards. And fortunate I am to have a copy from that time period. I think there were only 2, maybe 3 copies, and Lainey used 1 copy in her readings that she would do down on Larimer Square in Denver way back in the day. She would use these images, and there were no prescribed meanings. There was nothing. Again, took my father by surprise, so it was very experimental at that point in time. That's the story on that. And these images are what you find now in the Alchemy Edition deck. So those very first painted images, years and years later, not until what, you guys, when did I publish the Alchemy Edition? Maybe 2015-ish? Never saw the light of day until like 1980, 1990, almost 35 years later. That's unbelievable. But that's what happened. So those were the first, sort of punctured the veil, those images. And then, aside from Lainey reading with those cards, and Lainey disappeared, you guys, after maybe a year or 2. And took her deck with her, so that was gone. And then a few years later, a woman named Laddie came in. All she had was regular playing cards, and she just wrote the names of the images on the cards. But the whole project really just went kind of dormant after that first big burst. And my father actually took the images in a portfolio, a hand portfolio, and flew out to New York City and hit the streets back in those days, you could walk into a publishing office and make an appointment and be seen. And he brought home a contract from U.S. Game Systems. And he thought long and hard about this contract and ultimately decided that he didn't want to sign it. And he felt it was unfair to the artist. He thought it was a ripoff, which you could argue about publishing contracts. But it was at that point everything just went dark. It just went dark for a long time, and my father became very disenchanted. He didn't know if anything would ever happen with these images for cards that he had put his heart, soul, blood, sweat, tears, everything into, and he just sort of lost it, really. Here's a deep, dark secret. He literally destroyed some of the paintings in fits of complete exasperation. He didn't know why he had been used as a channel for this thing, if this was to be the fate. And I learned that from, I think it was Lainey told me that, or maybe Laddie, I don't remember. But so it went dark for a while, just sleepy. Laddie was out using it for a while, and that was it. And then in 1994, I remember the exact date because I had a cataclysmic personal event, and I became very interested in the cards. I sort of turned to this family calling, and I wasn't interested in cards before that. I had no desire to learn cards, but at that time I decided to look into what had happened to my father and what was going on, and I started really bothering my father, and we wound up just having these hours long conversations on the phone. Just, I could feel this pull and this this vortex I was entering, and that got my father excited again about what was going on, and he started illustrating again. And that was his way always of working with the cards, was to illustrate them. He didn't like reading the cards. He liked illustrating, and things would come through. That was his work. And this was the next little baby that we have here. Have you seen this deck before? It's got the old familiar back design that we have now on the playing card Oracle decks, but in blue. This was the first. And it's called the Picture Book of Fate and Fortune. Very rare at this point. Extraordinarily rare. And it was just the reawakening of everything, and a lot of the images are very similar to what you find in this first deck, the Alchemy Edition now, but some aren't, some are not. And one thing about my father is he never ever followed rules. Never. And cards were always in movement for him. He was always checking in with himself. And that was the only rule that he had, was to consult his own inner voice, which was very strong. Look how simple, you guys, for this Peddler's Ace. Again, it was just the reawakening, and he was just retuning into that playing card muse that was so prevalent in his life. Here's an interesting image for the Three of Diamonds, which eventually became the necklace in what you now find in the playing card oracles. But really sort of interesting little doodles in here you don't find in any of the other decks, right? Really kind of fun. And some of these appear in the Dream Diaries coloring book. I wanted to put some of these in there because I'm really so in love with a number of these images in here, and you can't get this deck anymore. So I put some in the coloring book. This is an interesting King of Spades. This is a classic now. This one is, did I put this in the coloring book? Maybe, I can't remember anymore, but it's definitely in a t-shirt in the Anna Cortez store and in the Meow Wolf gift shop. I love this version of the Nine of Spades, and I love this version of Tarine, right? The Lady of Spades. She's actually in the Oracle Alchemy book. Oracle Alchemy, the Art of Transformation in Life and in Card Reading. Love this version of her. Oh, and this is in the coloring book. Check her out. Love this version of Morgana. Hope you guys can see that whole image there. Absolutely love it. And one unique thing in this version of my father's work are these little sort of spirits or sprites or familiars that are behind a number of the court cards in here. And on this particular card, definitely feels like spirit possession. And I love that. I just think this particular Morgana is so, I don't know, I just think she brings out such a strong aspect of Morgana that really feeds into all the other decks, right? All these decks, you guys, all these different images of my father's feed into each other. And as you become familiar with more of them, they all sort of meld together in the mind and create a really rich, strong inner reference for card reading. So any of these alternate decks that you can get your hands on is definitely worth doing. This is a really simplistic version of the eights. Again, just reawakening in my father's mind. And so that's that deck. Picture book of Fate and Fortune. And this was self-published in Denver. You know, very few copies of these exist, unfortunately. Very, very few. It was really just right before the Playing Card Oracles deck came out. So it was quickly eclipsed by the Playing Card Oracles deck. And so, yeah, rare. Very rare. And then, let's see. So that was 96. This Playing Card Oracles deck, the very first one, was about 2001. Yeah, 2001. And you can see how similar it is. Similar in size. Cardstock is exactly the same. We printed these both at the same printer in Denver on a book printing press in Denver. And we literally had to have machine parts made to retrofit this book printing press to make cards. This was something this printer had never done before, and we had to work hand in hand with them every step along the way. My dad was almost sleeping down there. He was driving them crazy. And every one of these cards was hand punched, hand pressed out of these large sheets, and hand collated by family members. So yeah, this is the little love child right here. And it was first named the Picture Book of Anna Cortez. Actually, before that, it was called the Picture Book of Madame Zoe. a character that my father was completely obsessed with, a voice that he was hearing in his mind that was telling him stories that he was writing down, that you can find in the anacortez.com store as little ebooks. And so the first deck of the playing card oracles was named after her. Then, of course, my father wasn't following any rules, and he changed it to the picture book of Ana Cortez before we actually published it. And then it really got changed by U.S. Game Systems when we finally signed with them into the playing card oracles deck. So it's got all those names. But here's that. So we haven't gotten to the part in the story where U.S. Game Systems becomes the publisher. I want to dwell a little on this time period after this first deck came out, self-published. We self-published the book as well, the Playing Card Oracles book, and we had this cool little tin that you could buy to put your deck in, and it fit just perfectly in here. And it came in gold and silver, another keepsake if you can get your hands on. Worth doing. Had these cool little transparent decals on there, and I want you to see this. It says the picture book of Ana Cortez on there, but can you see Somlipith on there? The Dream Moth, the Ace of Clubs. He's always been the signature card for my father's decks. My father felt the Ace of Clubs was the true ruler of the playing cards, the 52 card deck, not the Ace of Spades. And always the Ace of Clubs was very important. You can see him on the back there as well. Really cool little item. Just another part of the history. And at that time, the set looked like this. This was the box set with the, very sturdy box with the book in here, book, and then the cards were in the bottom, and a little inset in here. And check out all these cool little playing cards around the edge. This was so fun. So we were self-publishing at that time. I was mailing these things out to bookstores across the country, and sometimes art galleries. But at that time, being a self-publisher was very different than it is right now. And I was writing letters, literally on paper, putting them in the mail to solicit bookstores across the country. And it was a lot of work to move product, a lot of work. And in time, my father and I sort of came to this harsh realization that we didn't have the time or the wherewithal or the connections to really make this project move the way we wanted it to, the way we felt it deserved. And I was a single mom raising kids, trying to make a living at the same time, and it was just not working. And so we signed on to U.S. Game Systems. We sort of went back to where my father had been years previous, and we got a contract from them, and we signed it, and which was a good decision, a very good decision. It definitely got the word out much better. And this was the first deck that they published, this big size, and it's really, when you compare it to this deck, very, very close, if not exact, in size. So that was it. And this is hard to get as well now. You know, they don't publish this size anymore. The last 2 printings of this deck from US Games have been in this standard playing card size. And you can also see the back design on this is same, right? Got the swirly thing going on, but it's got a border around the edge. So it's a little bit different. And it also comes with a booklet in here. Let's see if it's in here. Here it is. Comes with a little booklet. So that's the US Games version. They were publishing the book as well, the Playing Card Oracles book, in the beginning. And here was their set. This is what their set looked like with the large deck inside. You know, had the book in there. But now I'm publishing the book again. They are still publishing the deck. And I have just a very few little copies of the vintage version left. I call it the vintage version now, this original self-published version, which now comes like this, just ribbon tied, right? By the time you're watching this, probably there won't be any more of these left. Really down to the dregs now. I don't know, 20 copies left at this point in time. Rare. So that's that. Then, you know, these sweet little cards, these original images that were the oil paintings, were just crying out to me. They were always in the back of my mind, and they were the first, you know, images that came through my father with such explosion. There was so much energy in those and so much mojo, you know, and just felt really wrong that they hadn't been published as their own deck, you know. And some of the images are the same again, but some are quite different from the what's called the Playing Card Oracles deck. So there were lots of reasons to get these out, and it just felt intimidating to me for a long time. You know, people were used to these images, they were familiar with these, and I didn't want to create conflict by introducing new images. And I also knew that paintings, originals, were missing. There were 9 originals completely erased from the face of the earth, and I wasn't sure how to overcome that. So I just was getting so bad, it was bothering me so much, I just started digging through everything that I had from my father's house when he passed. And just, I mean, literally looking through every file folder, looking for any photograph or any visual record of anything that was missing. Because my dad was not an organized individual, just put it that way. And stuff could be found anywhere. It was like a great big Easter egg hunt. And now you have what's called the Alchemy Edition, right? All of this translated very well into these cards that we have here. And I'm eternally grateful that I took the time and effort to recreate this deck. And now it's available through my website, through Meow Wolf in Santa Fe, and you've got 2 sizes. One really big size and a standard playing card deck size. And these also come with this extra card in the bag, in the decorative bag that you get, you know. The card that has the link to the PDF booklet for instructions. Again, because some of the images vary quite a bit from the original playing card oracles. So you want that PDF booklet. And what else is going on around here? Do you guys want to see some of the Alchemy Edition images? Good, because I want to show them to you. Let's take this opportunity to just check some out. I always use the big size. I love the way they come to life in the larger size. Beautiful image for the Two of Diamonds. Ace of Hearts, absolutely stunning in the original oil painted version here. Lovely detail on these cards, just lovely. And you know, one amazing little fact, my father had no art training when he made these, you know, no art training at all. He had taken, you know, a one art class in high school that everybody had to take, and that was it. That was the extent. And these came out. So I just think there's a freshness, an aliveness, a mystery about these cards. And by the way, there's a brand new full-size book coming out to accompany this deck, which is now almost completely written and should be coming out, I don't know when, because I'm soliciting publishers right now, so I don't know what the process is going to be like, but this deck has a lot to say and a lot of unique ways that it can be used separate from the playing card oracles, turns out. So if you don't have a copy of this deck and you like these images, there's a lot going on here. I mean, they're just really, I don't know. They either appeal to you or they don't. Some people are freaked out by them. They're scared of them. And what I tell people is the fear that you're feeling is the power that you're feeling is trying to come through. And you're interpreting it as something to be afraid of. You know, power can feel scary. But once we recognize that that's what's going on, we can harness what's coming through for amazing work with cards. Ever since I've been working with them in my hand, you know, not just in my mind, but in my hands, so much is coming through. Nothing like when I just had them memorized and had little keywords on the cards. Having the images is a whole different thing. There's, you know, energy embedded in the image, and it communicates to you. And so lots of exciting things happening with the Alchemy Edition deck, and probably the name of the deck will be changing in time, but you know, just another twist along the journey. And one more deck to show you guys that was published after the Alchemy Edition deck, and that is this red-backed deck named the Kingdom of Outcasts. The Kingdom of Outcasts. And this is a deck that I introduced through Kickstarter. It was a deck of Outcast images that never made it into any of the previous decks. Well, more or less. As I mentioned, some images stayed the same throughout all the decks. So I tried to find versions of images that hadn't been seen before. Like a lot of preliminary sketches made it into this deck. There's the wind of the east, you know. So maybe a little fresh version of something. This is a wonderful card, King of Hearts with the nun behind him. This is an extra card with my father on it. You know, from all different time periods. This is about 96, yep. This was actually from the picture book of Fate and Fortune. Some of those images made it into here. This was a really cool preliminary sketch that never made it into any of the decks. But, you know, this deck did not get funded on Kickstarter, sadly. And so I have a pile of decks that have just never been moved. And at some point I will put those for sale. There's a preliminary sketch of the Ace of Hearts. And so yeah, you can look for that in the future. At some point I'll put those for sale. They all have this really cool deck bags that are made of velvet and these cool rubber stamps that I carved from original images of my father. Here we see Ace of Spades, the Ace of Clubs over here, moth, and I'll never do that again because I don't like ironing. So there's that. These are cool. This is a close-up of a preliminary sketch for the sevens. You know, the sword. A crazy messed up preliminary sketch for Seraphine that I thought was really cool in a disturbing sort of way. Here's a really cool 9 of diamonds. Not from any of the other decks, that I just thought was such an exceptional little part of my father's brain. Again, images were always morphing. There's no right or wrong for images. And as long as you bear in mind the number correspondence, you know, the meaning of the number, and the element, you know, every suit is very much tied to an element, and within those boundaries you can play a lot and the readings will work, you know, and you should play. You should stretch your mind and get to know the number and the element much better by doing so, right? So I don't know about this deck for readings, honestly. I've never tried this Kingdom of Outcasts deck for readings. It was designed as more of an opportunity to showcase some art that needed to be seen. You know, I think of it as an art deck. And if you guys get your hands on some of these when I put them for sale, I'd love to know how they work for you in readings. I mean, they might be mind-blowing. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And that's it. I wish there was more because I love spending time with you guys, but that's the long and twisted story of what is now known as the playing card oracles. Hope you've enjoyed this little foray. I hope it answers some questions in your mind about which decks are what. If you have any other questions or comments, I'd love to chat with you guys underneath the video in the comments. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for upcoming updates on what is happening with this amazing method of card reading, and make sure to click the little bell so you get notifications when new videos come out. Thanks again, guys. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.